All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Friday, the 22nd. Holy cow, what a day! One of the biggest momentum days I've seen in a long time, and it happened on a Friday. But just in terms of names that had earnings, of the China names, just unbelievable. Some of the some names just absolutely skyrocketed today. So I'll go over some of those movers. I always like to do this video on Friday just to kind of look back at the week, but I think I'm just going to have to spend some time on some of the order flow that we saw today, and some of the price action with earnings. Holy cow! So I'll go ahead. I'm tongue tied already. I knew that was going to happen. But look at the week's performance. I like to do this on Fridays just to see how we finished. Look at the small caps again, up 2.9%. We'll talk a little bit about the little shake and bake that we got yesterday. Really interesting in terms of sentiment and people's psychology, including my own. But SPY finished up 1.7%. The Qs, I think, lagged a little bit, as well as the transports. Both were up, but man, look at the transports. And I'm going to go over this chart. Why don't I do this now before I go over sectors? But we could look at so before I do that, let's go over SPY. Like I said, I'm going to go back and forth like crazy today because it was a crazy day and a pretty crazy week all in all. But SPY, we're above the 200-day moving average. We are, getting overbought on those S&P futures. 60, 68, 69 is where we are in the S&P futures. I think the SPY is a little bit more overbought. So the main thing to look at, and I've been saying this now for over a month, is with everybody doubting, and I didn't put this out on Twitter last night, but I talked about this in last night's video. The fact is, we're not losing the short-term moving averages. Some people use moving averages. Some people really dislike them. Why I have them on my screens, why they help me, is because the price, as long as the price stays above this short-term moving average, this yellow one, 5. You can see we had a couple hiccups, but we were into support here. But we're not losing the short-term momentum. Even yesterday, as people kind of ran for the hills yesterday because we were down 35 basis points. Just amazing to me that people got so negative. And I think part of it is that people have in the back of their mind that what we saw in December and October, November, it was so painful and such a longer. So everybody's waiting for that turn to happen. But look at IWM. Even IWM looked a little bit toppy yesterday, and note that it's just not giving back this short-term moving average. So that's one of the ways that I use the moving averages that helps me immensely. I've been talking about that for well over a month now. I've had it in various newsletters, and to use that as kind of a little bit of your way to kind of say to help you stay into this. I mean, you're not going to be able to. No one's going to be able to pick the top of this swing that we've got going on here. Of course, you want to be smart and take targets and make sure that you're banking money all along the way. As we're staying overbought now. The RSI on this IWM is a 76. Whew. So yeah, I mean, you could have said this yesterday. Unfortunately, this little pullback that we had yesterday did not really burn off any of those overbought levels. The Qs, like I said, they were still up on the week, but really did a lot of digestion. I think that's very healthy. I think a lot of people looking at those FANG stocks. Isn't it great to be able to look at some other things besides the FANG stocks? It's not, this market is not all about the FANG stocks. And if you're really, really focused on them, I think now there's positives to just looking at 4 or 5 stocks. You get to know them very well. The options are liquid in those names, but man, there are so many other opportunities that are moving this market right now than FANG stocks. And other stocks carrying the ball is a great thing. To not have 4 or 5 to be hung up on 4 or 5 stocks. But I think that's why you're just not seeing the momentum out of those names. And for me, that's fine. Plenty of groups to capitalize on. You just kind of have to have an open mind. It helps to look at option flow because you could see what they're buying right in front of you. So that's the cues. So let's go into sectors, and then I'll just spend a quick minute here. But you could see. So what did we have? So last week, what did we have outperform that big time? Energy stocks, right? They were up a huge clip. Biotech was also up. The home builders were up. What outperformed this week? So kind of a different group of stocks because energy underperformed. They still did okay. XOP was up 1.5%. So all in all, not bad considering I think they were up like 5-6% last week. But the solar names up 6.5%. Really some big strength there. Also, which I really liked was the materials. We played names like Tech, FCX. We talked about SCCO with this move in copper. What a move. And I think this is really getting people bullish on emerging markets. We'll talk about the emerging market. Look at copper today. Finished up 1.8%. So there's a big correlation between copper and emerging markets, which I am long, which is really nice to see this go hand in hand. Those are confirming one another. So you want to see copper go up if you're a believer in the or if you're long emerging markets. So what else? Yeah, the Chinese internets were up. The KWEB ETF was up 4% today. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a second. Also, steel names. I played some U.S. steel this week. I had a pretty darn good week. Even the banks started to participate a little bit, up 4%. So again, a lot of different groups. What's absent here? FANG stocks underperformed. Up still did fine. Up 80 basis points. Just really tough to play in like things in options right now with not that big of a move. But again, just like last week, I think the thing that was lagging last week was utilities, and they actually are on the leaderboard. But if we go to my watch lists for sectors, I don't think there was anything negative, was there this week? No. Biotech was your underperformer this week. A lot of heavy put buying in XBI, which I don't really understand. Maybe somebody's thinking that there's some volatility. That was the biggest put buying that I saw. And who knows? It could be somebody protecting a portfolio. You just don't know. Turning over to international, ASHR, Shanghai. Remember, Shanghai was closed not this week, but the week before. They came back with a roaring higher, up 5%. Great to see that as well. A lot of the emerging markets, not just China, but look at Vietnam, also outperforming up almost 4% this week. That's if you're bullish, or if you want it to kind of confirm your bullish thesis, you want to be seeing more than just the U.S. going up. You want to be looking out for a global rally. Look at the Greek ETF, and Germany finished up through. I mean, that's really we don't want to see Germany break down. Nice to see what the DAX did this week. Really came back hard when it looked like it was going to break down. So if I bring up this, and then I'll talk about the China move last night, and then we'll get to all those movers today, I promise, because there's something to be said for that. So let's just look at a quick chart of the DAX. Again, it's good to look at the international stuff to see, the breadth, the overall global breadth. But here's what happened in the DAX. Let's see. It's not bringing up the chart for me yet. There we go. So I called it a kick save here at this 50-day moving average, but look at it grind higher here. So again, really good to see. And then also areas like, sorry, I didn't want to dwell too much on international markets, but it is interesting. And I could spend an hour talking about this stuff, but I won't. I promise I won't do that. But I think the CAC is now above the 200-day moving. It's 200-day moving average. Right there, right, meeting right into the 200-day moving average. So let's talk about China and what happened. So this is a hint. If you're not following overnight markets, and you're playing, first of all, I think it's good to follow what happens in Asia and what happens in Europe, because if you're watching the S&P futures overnight, it doesn't make sense if you're just watching futures and you're not watching international markets. Unless there's some news specific to the U.S., they will basically track what is going on in Asia and Europe until we open, unless we have economics that come out at 8:30. But that's basically how it works. Again, barring any specific news, if something happens in the U.S., then it's going to kind of deviate from that. But here's a quick hint: if you're trafficking in any of the Chinese internet names, and I've said this before, and this is what we went over in the trading room this morning, is if you're trafficking in names like Baba, JD.com, Baidu, any of the names that went crazy today. Now, IQ and Bob and Baidu had earnings today, but really watching what China does overnight is going to tell you whether or not there may be some momentum in the Chinese internets. If they're down big on the day, then there's not going to be momentum there. But there's a big correlation between what China does overnight and what the Chinese internet names do, like Baba and JD. Right. So I wanted to cover that because that's I think essential if you're going to be trading those names. Again, the video is for information purposes only. That's my opinion, but I think important to pay attention. So we'll start with the China move. My goodness. So there's about 4 or 5 different things that went absolutely berserk today. I mean, this was up 20% today, 21% today. So just unbelievable. And then the other one, I mean, I played JD last night. I know the candle doesn't look this big, but that's a 7% move on a name that did not have earnings. I literally bought calls. We saw a bunch of, and I think I covered this in last night's video as well. Some call flow that was going up between 5 cents to 10 cents. They were the 25 strike calls. They closed at 95 cents. I bought those for between 5 and 6 cents yesterday. And, I thought I was sitting pretty. I was taking targets at 30 cents today, which is a huge win. And this thing continued. Now, thankfully, I also bought some stock. I bought stock right after I saw the Baidu. Interesting, Baidu did not participate at all, but sometimes it's just how it works with earnings. And it was the IQ that took off. So let's start to go into some other names. TTD, unreal. A 31% move. We played this one. I did not play this outright long. I actually sold put spreads, which worked out really well. But if you participated, 200. Boy, this hit a high of $200. So when this happens, I tend to play some of the other names in the group, right? This is an application software name or application enterprise. I actually don't know. And I'm not going to look it up right this second. But what did I play? I was looking for something. So we talked about pre-market. And if you're not a member of Tribeca Trade Group, this is the value that you get. I go over the areas that I think you should concentrate on. And the 2 areas that I mentioned were both the Chinese internets. We went over BZUN. Had a great day. We went over Momo. I mentioned JD that I was already in it, but I said this is a group to watch today. And then I said with this TDD, the other group to watch is the application software name. So what did I buy? I bought some Team today. I like that. We really haven't gotten. I was hoping that these would come in a little bit more, but with a strong group, sometimes you just don't get that many chances for that much of a pullback. So Team kind of came into the 20-day moving average. I bought it here. I bought some calls in the beginning of the day, and then I made it into a call spread. It was a trade idea that I sent out on the private Twitter feed. But you could have went with, there's a few names that I was watching today. I think Vive did okay today after a few days of a move down. There was a few other names, too, that kind of took off. The Workday, the Salesforce, the PAYC, which I think we went over too. Look at PAYC, was up 5.5%. So again, I could not get to all of them, but I just thought that this would be the day after a couple days of digestion for this group. They would probably take off again today. Zen was another one. I didn't get to see how this one finished. Yeah, of course, up 2.3% again. But it's tough, right? After seeing that move. So that was group number 2. I think really outperformed the whole group. What did IGV finish? That's the IGV ETF. Finished up 1.5%. Was amongst today's winners. So great moves there. So let's talk a little bit about today's option activity, which was thrilling to say the least. ARMN up 14%. This was there was chatter, there was calls that went up. I posted this on Twitter as well as in the room very quickly, and I jumped into some shares. I didn't hold this thing throughout the day, but I made some money on. I just went long outright. Stock because it's a $20 stock, and this way you don't have to worry about these names that have a super high implied volatility. Another name that we saw call buying in, and I'll spend a minute talking about this one, was EA Sports. So this was a trade that I was in. Right, I took this off pretty Nice timing on this one. I mentioned that the whole time, this version point of control, right? This was the area that I was looking at to take profits. I did that here. Now look to see what this thing is doing, right? It's given back, a good amount of those profits, and we're into support. So what happens? What happened? And it kind of just made sense. And this is why it's nice to kind of have a basis for what you're doing, and then maybe let the option activity confirm it. But look at the June 105 calls that went up today. Huge order. My thought is on EA is that it got a little bit overhyped. They were comparing this Apex to Fortnite, which is not the right comparison. They have similar models, but they're different games, right? So Fortnite is still the king in this space. But, you're getting a chance. Is it still going to be a game changer? Haha. For EA? Probably. I mean, I think that this is something different than what Take-Two and ATVI are doing. So this is probably a good place into support to buy it, and the call buyer confirmed that. $3.3 million order, and I did not see that versus stock. Just going back to the Chinese internets, look at this gigantic order in Alibaba today. A lot of traders in the room made some money on this today, some already long BABA. But look at this order that came in. This was also straight outright. Again, big chunky stuff, $1 million of premium. So for me, my rules are a little bit different. I didn't chase, I didn't participate in this one because I had just too many other things going on. But it is coming into a version point of control. What I normally talk about when we see all this emerging market activity, because it was fast and furious with not just BABA and not just some of the other Chinese internet names, but EEM, FXI. I mean, this was a nice order. These were puts. Sorry about that, but there were some big orders of calls as well that went up. FXI, what appeared to be a buyer of calls versus a seller of puts, went up. Big time order as well going out to August as well, and I guess a bit out of the money. So what do I when I see all this flow that's hitting the tape, and I said this in the room, you could kind of sit and wait a little bit if you like, or you could start a position. But many times when we see this much flow, I tend to let it breathe a little bit because and I don't know if they're going to be wrong this time, but a lot of times there's too much flow that's hitting the tape. And what'll happen is it'll dry up. On Monday, you won't see it. And then you'll get this to pull back in a couple days, and you'll be able to get in cheaper. So I didn't chase any of this flow that we saw. We also saw ASHR, which is the Shanghai ETF. This was against shares, so I have to check to see. About 120, not that big of a bet, 120,000. But they were basically hitting everything because it was moving. So this to me is not, now it may work, but it's not smart flow. It's just momentum buying, right? The smart flow option activity for me is when they start buying and there's nothing going on. When everything is moving and they're putting on these trades, they're chasing. And I don't want to chase. If I do, it's usually going to be a small position. But that's how I kind of view the option activity. I would rather let it settle in because this is not smart call buying. This is shoot, I don't have exposure and I want to get exposure to China. How do I do it? I'll buy FXI, ASHR, and EEM. So I've learned over the years with option activity to not chase any of this stuff unless if you're day trading, that's fine. Have a ball, right? But for swing trades and for longer positions, I think the charts look really constructive. So this was another name. Really interesting because a lot of times I do something a little bit different than most people do. I look at the what's going on in ETFs because especially in international, the ETFs will really give you a heads up on what people are doing because it's the easiest way. But so this is again, these were small bets in QD. This is a $5 stock. Why even bother with it with options? I don't know. You could buy it for $5 and not have to worry about the implied volatility, the time decay, any of that stuff. But what did we see the other day? Really savvy buy in this ETF, CHIX. So QD again is a China Financials. I don't know exactly what they do, but look at this. This is the China Financials ETF. Look at the buying that they did here. Look at no volume, and I confirmed this was all inflows going in. Not huge, we're talking about $10 million order, which in the realm of things of ETFs is not that big. But look at what they did here. This was around $16 up to 17. There's a virgin point of control, 1768. Pretty savvy buy. Again, that's the China financials ETF. So really nice there. What else do we see in option activity? But wait, there's more. I mean, it was ridiculous in terms of things. Mentioned EA. I mentioned the EM, FXI, ASHR, the BABA order. Then it got just ridiculous. There was some Arlo, which is a name that's down at $2. A little bit of LVS. There was also some AMD, which is a name that hasn't really done anything in the last 2 weeks. But there was some AMD this was midday, but at the end of the day, we saw some kind of momentum calls that went up. So maybe a name to watch for next week. It's starting to move out. So what else did I do today? It was also nice. I played a little bit to the short side around 12 o'clock. You knew that the Trump meeting was happening. So, I didn't think that we were going to really launch higher, but this was pretty nice. I bought some puts I think around 130-ish in the S&P, and so was able to quickly take them off because we did fall into support here. But look at how we ended on the day. Just absolutely unreal. All right, so that's about it. I'm just going to plug our room again. I think it's, second to none in terms of the analysis that we do and the trade ideas that we come up with on a daily basis. Again, it's also about management. I try to put in as much about risk management as possible in this market because it's so important, especially if you're trading options. You really have to make sure that you're taking targets. I mean, I was lucky enough to take a target on ISRG because I had a target out there. A name that just really didn't do anything for the rest of the day, but was able to on that first 5 minute bar make a lot of money on the call spread I have on because I got lucky. Making sure that you have a target out. So the preparation is important. All right, guys. So trybackatrategroup.com. I do have a special offer running right now. If you haven't been a member before, you can email me. I've got an alert special going on right now. Again, for new members who want to try it, you can email me at first initial last name at gmail.com is fine to use, or if you want to just hit me up on Twitter. But very pleased. I think my P&L is on the high of the year, so great stuff. Guys, have a great weekend and see you back on Monday.